Living in the society of men, the best man becomes a sinner. Therefore, wonder. The fortune of him who is sitting sits. It rises when he rises. It sleeps when he sleeps. It moves when he moves. Therefore, wonder.
The first roads were paths between agricultural settlements. Merchant paths were then put to military use. The Romans used their legions to build roads when not at war, in order to keep them fit and out of mischief. By the 3rd century, they had built a staggering 53,000 miles of road.
Latin was spoken from the Atlantic to the shores of the Black Sea, and Greek from there to Babylon. Roman law protected the traveller, and Roman coinage was honoured throughout the empire.
The Romans invented the holiday, and with it came souvenirs, tourism, and criticism. During the High Middle Ages, local lords invested in roads and bridges. Well-maintained, clean roads were safer to travel by, so more travellers meant more infrastructure, which meant more travellers, and so on. You can actually see Sanstol, the village, up on the hill surrounded by vineyards and olive groves, and I think wheat and rapeseed plantations. And I can sort of get a sense of what it must have been like for a medieval traveller. You know, exhausted, probably soaked through because I don't know why.
Pilgrimage, i.e. the act of travelling to a spiritual place, predates Abrahamic religions. It forms an integral part of Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Shinto, and the cult of St. Elvis, prophets of Presley. These paths cover thousands of kilometres and frequently cross borders.
I do feel this constant combination of absolute delight when there's nobody around me, but also sheer terror that I have gone the wrong way on what might be the best signposted route on Earth. So if you're capable of getting lost here, you are capable of getting lost anywhere. And I think I might be lost.
Christian pilgrimage is said to have begun with Constantine's mum, Go Mum, and reached its peak around the 12th century.
During this period, pilgrims could not be arrested, did not have to pay taxes, and their property could not be confiscated. How very convenient.
The medieval pilgrim may have gone on pilgrimage to give thanks for a prayer answered, experience a miracle, provide their Lord with a completed certificate of pilgrimage. You could have anyone's name placed on the document, and they believed it just as effective as if you'd completed the journey yourself. Exchange goods, as many paths were still the primary trade routes. Take advantage of other pilgrims and their money bags. Elevated status when they returned to court, or bragging rights back in the village.
Arnold von Harf was a wealthy 25-year-old who went on a 3-year pilgrimage to Santiago, Italy, Egypt, and even India and Africa, if he is to be believed. Writing his thoughts on politics, history, customs, landscapes and languages he encountered along the way. Returning home, no doubt insufferably self-satisfied.
An entire economy built up around the practice. At its zenith, a third of all Europeans were directly or indirectly involved in the business of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage was a contract between church and pilgrim. The beneficiary of a miracle was seen to have received an advance benefit on credit, which had to be purchased through a devotional journey and an appropriate offering.
The miracle of the hand of St. James is a cautionary tale in which a man with a broken arm vowed to make a pilgrimage if St. James would heal him. The saint granted his wish, but when the man failed to fulfill his vow, intervened again to break the man's other arm.
The route was long, physically demanding, and dangerous.
So at this point, I'm not sure where I am, save for the fact that I know I'm heading in the direction of Pamplona. And I actually feel more like a pilgrim than I thought I would, because I'm in so much pain and I am walking so slowly. I'm not stopping though, at the fear of not being able to restart, which means I'm the slowest freight train on Earth.
In addition to water, money, provisions and clothing, pilgrims also carried offerings, which they were expected to deposit along the way. Pilgrims would frequently be carrying additional offerings from those at home, to either be gifted en route or to be charged with holy power by placing them near a relic and bringing them all the way back home again.
Slow, steady, one foot in front of the other. I will eventually make it to here.
When Diego Galmírez was building the new cathedral in Santiago, pilgrims were requested to carry limestone on the Camino, a bit like the Vatican asking you to carry cement from France.
I'll spare you my feet. Cool.
The journey itself, for which long-haul pilgrims might amount to more than a year's income. The opportunity cost of foregoing employment during your absence. Major risks such as shipwreck, disease, exhaustion, and robbery. Offerings for the shrine at your destination and those along the way. Pilgrims might obtain money from those who wished to have prayers said for them at the shrine. Marjorie Kemp, for example, received 7 marks to pray for a woman in Santiago. Pilgrimage might be combined with commercial activity along the route. The document pilgrims received on completion of their journey granted them trading rights along the Camino, which might be exploited on the return journey. Some people who found it difficult or impossible to go on a pilgrimage themselves could cover the travel expenses of a surrogate pilgrim and pay them for their labours.
Banking for pilgrims was astonishingly effective and profitable. The Knights Hospitaller and Templar, you'll know these guys because of the Crusades, which was a form of military pilgrimage, established a network of preceptories between 1130 and 1300, running from Western Europe all the way to the Holy Land, in which they provided a prototype retail banking service on a commercial basis to pilgrims and crusaders. The Knights Templar, in particular, became general lenders of large sums of money to the kings of England and France, and therefore central players in European financial markets. Shrines are a form of franchise business operating under the umbrella brand of the Universal Church.
Shrine managers marketed their patron saint and/or relic and took in offerings from visitors. Pilgrimage increased their market share. The value for the papacy lay in the fact that the shrine network supported the wider church's financial needs while extending and strengthening numbers of the faithful.
The pièce de la résistance, this was the power source and arguably what all the fuss was about. Relics were tangible objects associated with the saint, or indeed their physical remains. What's important here was the presence, not the provenance of a holy relic. And indeed, the power, as far as miracle working was concerned, was just as concentrated in a tiny piece of the bone as it was in the intact corpse. This doctrine encouraged the theft of relics. Hugh, Bishop of Lincoln, and later Saint Hugh in his own right, travelled from England to Normandy to bite pieces of bone off of the arm of Mary Magdalene and bring them home. Many modern business practices, such as active brand management and promotional techniques, were used throughout the Middle Ages.
Highly competitive pilgrimage services, such as accommodation, food and wine, transport, banking, and souvenirs, involved complex commercial relationships between the private sector and local church authorities. Some tactics included installing multiple strongboxes around a shrine for ease of contribution, performance-related pay for shrine attendants directly linking their remuneration to the shrine's takings. A local parishioner who received a miracle in the past might be paid to remain at the shrine and tell pilgrims about his experience. More prominent shrines would employ a notary or local monk to compile the miracle stories associated with their relic and produce a promotional brochure. Shrine custodians may decide to target a particular subset of pilgrims. Le Puy became associated with the cause of the French monarchy during the 100 Years' War, for example. Some focused on aristocratic pilgrims, while others valued the superior numbers of more humble pilgrims. Fairs and festivals could be held to promote a shrine. In 1248, Henry III introduced a 15-day fair at Westminster and simultaneously banned fairs anywhere else.
Mitcham for pilgrimage.
A common brand refresh in response to waning interest was a translation of the saint's relics to a new and more grandiose tomb. When Becket was installed in a new tomb in Canterbury's enlarged cathedral in 1220, all the stages on the road from London provided the public free food, and once they reached the city, free wine. Relics could be leveraged for further profit. Shrine custodians who lacked the patience could take their relics on tour. These processions were called quests and were sometimes delegated to professional questers. If a tour couldn't satisfy fast enough, in 1235 the Abbot of Tulle pawned the annual expected offerings from the Virgin's altar for 4,000 silver marks. It was not unusual to sell your relic, just as the Emperor of Constantinople did when he sold the crown of thorns to King Louis IX. The increased supply and insatiable appetite for relics following the fall of Constantinople led Pope Innocent III, in an attempt to regulate the relic market, to decree that no one should presume to announce new relics before first having them approved. Originally, sainthood was a reward for martyrdom, but increasingly local communities wanted their own saints, and so the concept of confessor saints emerged, in which one's life qualified one for sainthood. In protecting its monopoly over shrines, relics, and saints, the papacy was concerned about protecting its franchise network and umbrella brand. If claims to sainthood were not scrutinized, miracles not validated, relics not authenticated, and indulgences left to the discretion of shrine custodians, the credibility of the Church's spiritual services would be undermined, and the entire pilgrimage industry would suffer.
The main three ways that offerings were spent by shrine custodians were: number one, maintaining the fabric of the church, your leaky windows, roofs, and doors. Second, supporting the local parishioners, because of course a shrine was usually also the local church. And third, providing sustenance and accommodation to pilgrims. This quickly became focused on poor and sick pilgrims, with the wealthy choosing to, wisely due to infectious and incurable disease, or having to, when pilgrimage became a little too popular, find and fund their own accommodation and food. At a later date, Compostela pilgrims could specify whether their offering was for St. James, i.e. alms for the poor, or towards the building fund. Custodians pocketing a tip was also not unheard of. Do you know what we don't need in the background?
So you've left or lost all your offerings now. What do you take home to remind you and everyone around you that you were once a pilgrim? The first Christian mementos were earth and loose stones broken off of Christ's tomb in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The solution to this spiritual vandalism was souvenirs. Since the Roman period and into the 13th century, the most popular pilgrim souvenir was the ampulla, a small hollow container where holy water from the shrine could be taken home. Badge popularity peaked in the 14th century. Typically featuring a saint, the majority were cast in tin lead, though the wealthy could buy them in silver or gold. In 1466, 130,000 were sold at a Swiss monastery in a fortnight. From the mid-15th century, woodcuts and other types of prints were available. From the early 16th, pilgrims were able to buy copperplate engravings of religious images and illustrated lists of relics. Long before the Camino de Santiago, jet was believed powerful in warding off the evil eye. The material was plentiful in Asturias, and the craft of jet carving was closely guarded in specialized guilds. In most figurines, St. James is distinguished from other apostles with his staff, shell, and wallet. Always shown standing in a frontal position, with long curly hair, beard, and bare feet, he often holds the Book of Gospels to differentiate him from the pilgrims carved alongside him who arguably also have staffs, shells, wallets, bare feet, and long curly locks.
Anyway, James. St. Augustine spoke of the violence of habit, that man must break clear of old patterns and ways of seeing the world if he is to enter a new, deeper level of existence.
There have been bumps in the path, notably world wars, pandemics, papal schism, religious wars, climate and geopolitical change. But so many of the reasons for pilgrimage have not changed, nor have the financial and market tools that drive the industry. It is an industry with the potential to preserve populations, crafts, heritage buildings, and one of the most profoundly life-changing journeys for millions of people over the past 2,000 years.
Ooh, bird.
It was over. It was not over, although where the way would lead next, none of us knew. El camino es una droga, the Spaniards say. It enters the body, it fills the veins, it floods the heart and mind. The way, of course, is nothing more than a daunting physical metaphor for life itself. There are maps of the ground and maps of the spirit. We believe they are distinct. They are not. They weave and thread together. What is comforting and intriguing is how little the Camino's own culture has changed. The rogues and grumbling priests, the patient nuns and taciturn smallholders, the devout, the lost souls, and the bold adventurers. They have always, of course, been part of the caravan.